Evelyn thought decluttering would change everything. She pictured herself sipping tea in a serene, minimalist living room, free from the chaos of too much stuff. But after donating bags of belongings, her home felt emptier, yet her mind was still cluttered. Why? Because decluttering doesn't always equal simplicity. Sometimes, it just shifts the mess from one place to another, both physically and emotionally. In today's journey, we'll uncover 15 surprising mistakes Evelyn made and how you can avoid them. Let's start with the first one that might be holding you back. 1. Mistaking decluttering for instant simplicity. Evelyn stood in her living room, surrounded by neatly stacked boxes labeled donate, trash, and keep. The hard part was over, or so she thought. She expected to feel a wave of relief, like a switch had flipped, and simplicity would flood in. But as the days passed, her home looked tidier, yet her mind felt just as cluttered. Why didn't the emptiness bring peace? This is one of the biggest misconceptions about decluttering, that once you get rid of things, simplicity magically appears. But here's the truth. Decluttering is just the first step, not the destination. Evelyn had cleared out her belongings, but she hadn't addressed the habits and mindsets that created the clutter in the first place. Instead of focusing solely on what to get rid of, shift your focus to why you want to declutter. Ask yourself, what kind of life do I want to create in this space? Maybe it's a cozy reading nook, a stress-free kitchen, or just the ability to move freely without obstacles. Once you have a clear vision, your decluttering decisions will be guided by purpose, not just the desire to have less. Evelyn realized that simplicity wasn't about having fewer things. It was about creating a home that supported her well-being. She started rearranging her space to reflect the life she wanted, not just an empty room. And that's when she felt the shift. Not because her shelves were bare, but because her heart felt lighter. 2. Decluttering without understanding emotional attachments. One rainy afternoon, Evelyn found herself sorting through a dusty box of old letters and photos tucked away in the attic. She'd read somewhere that if something doesn't spark joy, you should let it go. So, she tossed out a stack of cards, thinking she was freeing herself from unnecessary clutter. But later that evening, a deep pang of regret hit her. Those cards held memories, inside jokes with friends, handwriting of loved ones long gone. She wasn't just throwing away paper, she was discarding pieces of her history. Decluttering isn't always about being ruthless. Sometimes it's about recognizing the emotional weight certain items carry and finding ways to honor those feelings. Evelyn's mistake was treating sentimental items the same as expired coupons or broken gadgets. When you come across something sentimental, pause, hold the item and ask, why does this matter to me? If it connects you to a meaningful memory, consider keeping it, but with intention. Instead of stuffing it in a forgotten box, display it, create a memory album, or take a photo to preserve the sentiment without the physical bulk. Evelyn gathered the letters she'd saved and placed them in a beautiful box on her bookshelf, a small shrine to her cherished memories. She realized that simplicity doesn't mean erasing the past, it means curating it with love. 3. Replacing clutter with new purchases. After her big decluttering spree, Evelyn felt accomplished. Her shelves were clean, her closets spacious, but soon she found herself browsing online shops, filling her cart with new organizational tools, pretty baskets, trendy storage bins, color-coded labels. It felt productive, even exciting. But within weeks, those sleek containers became clutter themselves, filled with random items she didn't need. Evelyn had simply swapped one type of clutter for another. This is a sneaky trap. Decluttering feels like progress, and buying new things to organize that clutter feels like the next logical step. But here's the catch. Buying more stuff to manage your stuff isn't simplifying, it's just rearranging. Before purchasing any new storage solutions, ask yourself, do I really need this, or am I trying to fix clutter with more clutter? Focus on using what you already have. Repurpose old boxes, baskets, or containers before buying anything new. And most importantly, question whether the items you're organizing even need to be kept. Evelyn took a hard look at her shiny new bins and realized they were more about aesthetics than function. She returned what she could and focused on truly simplifying, keeping only what served a purpose or brought her joy. Her home felt calmer, not because it was perfectly organized, but because it was authentically hers, free from the pressure to be picture perfect. 4. Focusing on aesthetics over functionality. Evelyn had always admired the glossy pages of home magazines. The pristine, all-white kitchens, color-coordinated bookshelves, and perfectly folded towels stacked like hotel linens. Oh, how they sparkled with perfection. Inspired by these images, she spent a weekend transforming her living room into what she thought was a minimalist dream. She arranged decorative baskets, bought matching throw pillows, and even labeled jars in the pantry with fancy calligraphy. But something felt off. The room looked beautiful, yes, but it didn't feel like home. She found herself frustrated because the baskets she'd purchased were hard to access, the perfectly arranged cushions weren't comfortable, and the new layout made it awkward to reach her favorite reading chair. The lesson? Decluttering isn't about achieving an aesthetic. Simplicity isn't measured by how Instagram-worthy your space looks. It's about how comfortably and efficiently it works for you. When you declutter and reorganize, ask yourself, is this functional for my daily life? Prioritize ease over appearance. For example, keep frequently used items within reach. Arrange furniture to support your routines, and don't be afraid of a little lived-in charm. A cozy blanket draped over a chair may not win design awards, but if it brings comfort on chilly nights, that's what truly matters. Evelyn gradually let go of the pressure to make her home look perfect. She swapped the stiff, stylish chairs for her old, cozy armchair, right next to the window where she loved to read. It didn't look like a magazine spread, but it felt like home, and that's the real beauty of simplicity. 5. Decluttering for others, not yourself. At some point, Evelyn's daughter Karen decided to help with the decluttering process. She showed up one Saturday, sleeves rolled up, armed with garbage bags, declaring, "Mom, we're going to clear out all this clutter today." Karen meant well, but the process felt rushed and overwhelming. Items were tossed into bags with little thought, and Evelyn found herself agreeing just to avoid conflict, even though her heart wasn't ready to part with some of those things. Later, Evelyn sat alone, staring at an empty shelf where her late husband's old radio once sat. She didn't even listen to it anymore, but it had been part of her life for decades. The guilt settled in, not because she'd kept it for so long, but because she'd let it go for someone else's reasons, not her own. Here's the thing, decluttering is personal. It's not about meeting someone else's expectations, whether it's family encouraging you to downsize or friends pushing you toward minimalism trends. The process should reflect your values, not theirs. Before decluttering, set boundaries. If someone offers to help, communicate your needs clearly. I appreciate your support, but I want to decide what stays and goes at my own pace. Remember, there's no timeline for simplicity. You're not obligated to let go of something just because someone else thinks you should. Eventually, Evelyn found her balance. She invited Karen over again, but this time she led the process. They shared stories about old keepsakes, laughed over forgotten trinkets, and made decisions together. It wasn't about getting rid of things. It was about honoring what mattered most. 6. Ignoring mental and digital clutter. After Evelyn had tidied every drawer, organized every shelf, and even color-coded her wardrobe, she expected to feel a sense of peace. But something was still off. Her mind felt busy, restless, like there was an invisible weight she couldn't shake. That's when she realized the clutter wasn't just physical, it was mental. Stacks of unopened mail sat in the corner, emails piled up in her inbox, and her calendar was filled with commitments she no longer enjoyed. Clutter doesn't always take up space on your shelves. Sometimes it lives in your head and on your devices, quietly draining your energy. Start with what feels the most overwhelming. Is it your calendar, your inbox, a pile of papers? Set a timer for 15 minutes and tackle one small area. For digital clutter, unsubscribe from newsletters you don't read, delete apps you never use, and organize files into folders. For mental clutter, write down everything swirling in your mind, your to-do list, worries, or random thoughts, and prioritize what truly matters. Evelyn called this her mind sweep. Every morning she'd spend a few minutes jotting down her thoughts, clearing the mental fog before starting her day. She also created a simple email system, folders labeled important, to read later, and trash. It wasn't perfect, but it was manageable, and that made all the difference. Over time, Evelyn discovered that simplicity isn't just about clean spaces, it's about clarity of mind. A decluttered home feels nice, but a decluttered mind, that's true freedom. 7. Decluttering without a vision or purpose. Evelyn had done it all, sorted, donated, and even color-coded, but something still felt off. It wasn't the clutter that lingered this time, it was the emptiness. She'd spent weeks clearing out drawers, closets, and shelves, but never paused to ask herself, what am I making space for? Decluttering without a clear vision is like setting sail without a destination. You might drift, but you won't feel like you're truly getting anywhere. Evelyn realized she'd been so focused on removing things that she'd forgotten to consider what she wanted to add. Not physical items, but feelings, experiences, and purpose. Before diving into another decluttering session, take a step back. Grab a notebook and ask yourself, what do I want my home to feel like? Cozy? Peaceful? Inviting? Maybe you want a reading nook filled with natural light, a clutter-free kitchen to inspire joyful cooking, or simply more open space to breathe. For Evelyn, the answer was simple. She wanted her home to feel like a sanctuary, a place of warmth and reflection. With that vision in mind, decluttering became more intentional. She wasn't just tossing items, she was curating her environment to reflect the life she wanted to live. The shift was subtle, but powerful. Decluttering wasn't a chore anymore. It was a creative process, like painting on a blank canvas. Evelyn wasn't just making space, she was making room for herself. 8. Overlooking sentimental items without reflection. 1 sunny afternoon, Evelyn opened a dusty box tucked deep in her closet. Inside were old postcards from her travels, her children's kindergarten drawings, and a scarf her mother had knitted decades ago. She'd almost tossed it out during her initial decluttering spree, thinking, I never used this. But now, holding it in her hands, memories flooded back. Her mother's warm laugh, the way she wrapped that scarf around Evelyn's neck on chilly days. Decluttering advice often encourages us to be ruthless, but when it comes to sentimental items, that approach can leave emotional scars. The truth is, you don't have to let go of everything to live simply. Sometimes the key is to reflect, not reject. If it's something meaningful, consider displaying it rather than hiding it in a box. Evelyn created a small memory corner, a shelf with her favorite photos, that beloved scarf, and a framed postcard from her trip to Italy. It wasn't clutter, it was a tribute to the life she'd lived. The process of reflection helped Evelyn realize that simplicity isn't about erasing the past, it's about honoring it thoughtfully, without letting it overwhelm the present. 9. All or nothing thinking. Evelyn had a habit of thinking in extremes. It was either I'll declutter the whole house today, or forget it, I'll never get it done. This all-or-nothing mindset led to burnout and frustration. She'd start strong, clearing out closets like a whirlwind, but by the end of the day she'd be exhausted, staring at half-finished piles, and feeling like she'd failed. Decluttering isn't a sprint, it's more like a gentle walk through your life story. When we expect perfection overnight, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Evelyn's breakthrough came when she realized that small, consistent steps were far more powerful than occasional bursts of effort. Ditch the all-or-nothing mindset. Instead, embrace the just one thing rule. Each day, commit to decluttering just one drawer, one shelf, or even one item. Set a timer for 10 minutes, if that feels easier. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Evelyn started with small wins. One day she cleared out a single kitchen drawer. The next, She organized her nightstand. These tiny victories built momentum, and over time, her home transformed, not through grand gestures, but through gentle, consistent care. The beauty of this approach, it's sustainable. Evelyn didn't feel overwhelmed or drained. Instead, she felt empowered, knowing that even the smallest action could create lasting change. And in the end, that's what simplicity is all about, finding peace in progress, not perfection. Ting Kun. Neglecting the emotional process of letting go, Evelyn thought decluttering was purely a physical task. Pick it up, decide if you need it, and move on. But one day, she found herself sitting on the floor with a faded quilt her mother had made. It was torn and frayed, no longer serving any practical purpose, yet her hands trembled as she considered parting with it. She wasn't just letting go of a quilt, she was letting go of Sunday afternoons spent wrapped in it, her mother's comforting scent lingering in the fabric. Decluttering isn't just about clearing space, it's about navigating the emotions attached to the things we own. Ignoring those feelings can lead to regret, resentment, and even more clutter as we avoid facing difficult decisions. When faced with emotionally charged items, pause, acknowledge the feelings that arise: grief, nostalgia, even guilt. Instead of pushing those emotions aside, sit with them, create a ritual around letting go, say a few words of gratitude, take a photo to preserve the memory, or repurpose the item into something meaningful. Evelyn decided to cut a small piece of the quilt and frame it, turning it into art that honored her mother's memory, without keeping the entire quilt. This process taught Evelyn that decluttering isn't about detachment, it's about honoring the past while making space for the present. By allowing herself to feel, she found healing in the process, not just in her home, but in her heart. 11. Thinking decluttering is a one-time event. After weeks of sorting, donating, and organizing, Evelyn leaned back in her chair, proud of her clutter-free home. She thought, "I've finally done it, I'm finished." But months later, she noticed little piles creeping back, mail stacking up, random items cluttering the counters, and drawers mysteriously filling again. It was frustrating. She thought decluttering was a one-and-done deal. But life doesn't work that way. Decluttering isn't a project with a finish line. It's an ongoing practice, like brushing your teeth or watering plants. Life is dynamic. New items come in, habits shift, and seasons change. Expecting to declutter once and never revisit it sets us up for disappointment. Shift your mindset from decluttering as an event to decluttering as a habit. Evelyn created simple routines to maintain her progress. She introduced a 5-minute reset each evening, tidying one small area before bed. Once a month, she did a quick sweep of her home, checking for items that no longer served her. These small habits made a huge difference. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, Evelyn felt in control. Her home stayed organized, not because she worked harder, but because she built simple, sustainable habits. Decluttering wasn't something she did, it became part of who she was, woven seamlessly into her daily life. 12. Ignoring the joy factor. During Evelyn's early decluttering days, her focus was all about what to get rid of. She'd pick up an item and ask, "Do I need this?" Or "When was the last time I used it?" It felt practical but also a bit dull. She realized she was missing something important: joy. Her home was getting emptier, but it wasn't getting happier. Decluttering isn't just about eliminating clutter, it's about creating a space that makes you feel alive, inspired, and content. Focusing solely on what to remove overlooks the opportunity to celebrate what truly brings you joy. Flip the script. Instead of asking, "What should I get rid of?" ask, "What do I absolutely love having in my life?" Walk through your home and notice the items that make you smile. A favorite mug, a cozy blanket, a photo that warms your heart. Highlight those items, give them prominent spaces, and design your environment around them. Evelyn rearranged her living room, centering it around things she adored: a vibrant painting from her travels, a rocking chair that reminded her of her grandmother, and her favorite books. Suddenly, her home didn't just feel decluttered, it felt alive. It reflected her, filled with pockets of joy in every corner. By focusing on joy, Evelyn discovered that simplicity isn't about less, it's about more of what matters, and that made all the difference. 13. Believing decluttering solves all problems. Evelyn once thought decluttering would be her magic wand, a simple wave over her home, and suddenly all her stress, sadness, and overwhelm would disappear. But after clearing closets, drawers, and even the infamous junk room, she realized something surprising. Her emotional clutter didn't vanish with the physical stuff. Decluttering can certainly lighten the load, but it's not a cure-all. It won't heal grief, mend broken relationships, or magically create happiness. It's just one tool in a much larger toolbox for well-being. Evelyn had to face the fact that while her space was more open, her heart still held on to unresolved feelings. Instead of expecting decluttering to fix everything, view it as a supportive practice. Think of it like tending a garden. You pull the weeds, but you also need to plant seeds of joy and care for what grows. Alongside decluttering, nurture your emotional health through things like journaling, connecting with loved ones, or exploring hobbies that bring you fulfillment. Evelyn found peace, not just in her tidy home, but in daily walks, meaningful conversations, and even small acts of self-kindness, like writing herself little notes of encouragement. Decluttering helped create the space, but she filled it with purpose. The real transformation wasn't in the clean shelves, it was in how she chose to live within them. 14. Overvaluing minimalism trends. Evelyn had fallen down the rabbit hole of minimalism blogs and Pinterest boards. She admired the stark white walls, perfectly folded linens, and homes with only 30 items. She thought, maybe that's the key, owning as little as possible. So she tried to mimic that lifestyle, stripping her home down to the bare essentials. But instead of feeling free, she felt lonely. Her once cozy space now felt sterile, like it belonged to someone else. Minimalism can be inspiring, but when we follow trends blindly, we risk losing what makes our homes uniquely ours. Evelyn realized that her grandmother's old rocking chair, her eclectic collection of mugs, and the colorful quilt on her bed brought her joy, not clutter. Redefine simplicity on your terms. Ask yourself, does this make me feel happy, comfortable, and connected to my life? Forget rigid rules about how many items you should own. Keep what adds value to your daily experience, whether that's 5 cozy blankets or a shelf full of well-loved books. Evelyn brought back a few items she'd stored away: family photos, a quirky lamp from a flea market, and her favorite mismatched coffee mugs. Her home wasn't minimalist, but it was authentic. It told her story, not someone else's. Simplicity isn't about living with less, it's about living with what matters most to you. 15. Forgetting to celebrate progress. After all the decluttering, organizing, and emotional work, Evelyn stood in her living room, sipping tea, surrounded by spaces that felt warm, intentional, and peaceful. But instead of feeling proud, she caught herself thinking, what's next? Should I do more? She realized she'd been so focused on doing that, she'd forgotten to pause and celebrate how far she'd come. We often downplay our progress, thinking it's not enough. But every small step deserves acknowledgement. Decluttering isn't just about the end result, it's about the journey, the choices, and the courage it takes to face your stuff, both physical and emotional. Create a ritual to celebrate your progress. Light a candle in your newly decluttered space, take photos to capture the transformation, or write a letter to yourself, reflecting on how you feel now compared to when you started. Even something as simple as sitting quietly and breathing deeply in your refreshed environment can be a powerful form of gratitude. Evelyn made it a habit to pause and appreciate her space regularly. She'd sit in her favorite chair, look around and think, I did this, I created this piece. That sense of accomplishment didn't come from perfection. It came from honoring her efforts, because in the end, simplicity isn't just about clearing space. It's about creating a life that feels meaningful, joyful, and truly your own, and that is worth celebrating. Who knew decluttering was more than just tossing socks in mystery Tupperware lids?
Evelyn's journey proves it's about heart, not just housekeeping. So, take a breath, give yourself a high five,
And remember, progress over perfection. Share your decluttering wins in the comments. Let's celebrate your space and your story.